swing is going to be a grand slam home run. Swing and drive, Belton right. Welcome to the show.
And here is Victor Scott II, St. Louis Cardinals prospect who I think has pretty much set the minor league baseball world on fire with his speed. But as I saw this past week, man, you can swing it, you can defend, you can do a lot of things on the baseball field. First and foremost, congratulations on the Fall Stars appearance yesterday. I know that was a lot of fun with your parents in attendance and all that good stuff. But also, thank you so much for coming on the show and taking the time.
Most definitely. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
So let's start with the Arizona Fall League, and then we'll kind of work backwards because, again, I just had the opportunity to see you play, watched you rip a home run 107 pull aside, but also watched you do what you always do, which is steal bags, and obviously play some good defense in center field. What's been your focus out there? Because, again, there's so many different things that you do well. Certain players, might be to cut down on the strikeouts, work on the defense. Like there might be some specific things. For you, it seemed like it was just getting reps, right, and continuing to build on what was an awesome season already.
Yeah. Just coming out here, I really wanted to kind of just work on consistency. It's 162 games that you're playing in the big league. So coming out here and getting those extra games under my belt, just being able to kind of repeat what I was doing in the season, having like the same schedule, having the same routine, having the same like recovery program, just kind of continually implementing myself into basically a major league schedule is pretty much like what my focus was coming out here.
Well, you played 132 this regular season, which is already, I'm sure, a different beast than anything you're used to. How did you kind of feel getting out there, especially for a guy that uses his legs so much, right? It's not like you're a DH and go out there, take 10 swings and call it a day. You got to be fresh. You got to be good to go to be playing the way Victor Scott plays. So how did you feel when you started in the Fall League, and have you felt maybe a little bit more of that importance on the little things when it comes to recovery, when it comes to, just being able to stay fresh? Because you're at 154 games. If we include the Fall Stars game, 155, that's a full workload.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of attributed all to like just kind of work ethic and like how determined are you to keep yourself on the field. Those kind of principles were instilled in me when I was younger from my mom and my dad. It all kind of streamlined from the classroom with my mom always being on me about academics, and like if an assignment wasn't good enough in her eyes, then she would print out another one and I have to do it again. Kind of like the same thing on the flip side of that on the field. My dad would go and hit fungos to me and hit fly balls, ground balls. And if I ever missed one, he would test my limit, test my range. And if I ever missed one that like would be like completely in left field and I'm taking him in center, it would be like a 50 push-up penalty. So like they always kind of held me to like that standard. So kind of growing up, I always had like these same principles and same morals and values of work ethic and kind of taking care of myself, both mentally and physically. And coming into the season, I knew like this is what I was going to have to do in order to kind of maximize my performance on the field. So I began to work out twice a week. I mean, like I wasn't already doing this, but I would work out twice a week and like make sure I was doing that. And then also getting in the ice tub at least twice a week was huge and fundamental for me as it came like in those dog days of the summer, and then kind of pushing towards the end at the final stretch.
So you're not the first guy to mention the ice tub on the show over the last couple months. And it's obviously been something that I've seen a lot of people, even that aren't professional athletes, start to utilize as kind of a resource for them. Can you talk about what that does for you in terms of recovery and who kind of puts you onto that?
Yeah. So I'll kind of start from like who put me onto it and then kind of develop from there. But I know my dad was like, he was a track athlete. So he always, and a football player. So he would always tell me like, hey man, you need to start getting into ice tub. He told me that in West Virginia, but it was already cold enough over there, man. And I wasn't
It's a tough sell, man. It's a tough sell.
It was already cold enough. So I wasn't really trying to, and then it wasn't like a minor league schedule. And then as I got into pro ball, I think it was like after like my second week and I was just doing Normatec boots. And then I was like, Dad, like my legs are feeling it. He was like, dude, it's only the second week. And he was like, either you gonna get in that ice tub or you're gonna keep feeling it. So sure enough, I kind of like took baby steps towards it, like where I would go like just kind of waist deep. And then I sat down one time And then now I'm to the point where I'll go like on entry, head underwater, and then I'll come back up and I'll sit there for 3 minutes. So like now I've gotten a lot better with how I'm kind of going about that. But what it does for me is it's just a whole kind of like a reset button for me. So like a lot of times you can play 1 or 2 games and then your body starts to begin to kind of drag towards like the end of the season. But with that, I never felt like I'm dragging myself to get to the field, or like even my preparation work is becoming more focused and more refined because my body feels refreshed. So it helped out. It helped out my mind a lot. It helped out my body a ton. Was definitely, especially like used for. But the mind benefits is second to none.
It's one of those things that everyone that does it swears by it, but it's just like it's ripping the Band-Aid off of being able to get in there and do that. But where do you feel like that gets your legs and things like that? Because again, it's so important for you to be fresh and be feeling good. Do you feel like when you do that, you're ready to go? Like, feel like you recover a little bit quicker?
Yeah, pretty much every time I get in that, I mean, a lot of injury comes from inflammation. So you kind of eliminate that inflammation component in your joints, and then now you start to talk about like, okay, now this guy is fresh. Unless you just like break a hand or tear a ligament, like I hope that never happens to anyone. But like things like hamstring pulls or tendonitis in the knees and elbows, that comes from inflammation. So when you're sitting in that, all inflammation is being almost removed from your body in that time, and then now you're you're regenerating new blood flow, which is pretty much what it's used for.
You might have just put me on because I'm still sore from my playing days. My right shoulder, dude, like it kills me all the time. I go play softball, throw a couple of times, and I feel it for like a week. So I might need to be doing that when I get back home to Florida because again, you're like the third person that plays at a really high level and is an athletic, specimen and swears by this. So I'm in on that. But kind of wrapping up on the fall league talk before we work backwards, because I want to talk about this season that was so remarkable for you in so many different ways. How has the competition been out there? Because it is kind of a mixed bag of, from a pitcher's perspective, you've got some guys that are extremely talented that are trying to make up for maybe some innings that they missed. You got some relievers who are wild that are trying to hone in on their command, which is hard to handle in its own way. And it's just all these different ranges of pitching types. You've got guys that pitched in the big leagues for quite a bit that are out there. So it's this wide range, and I'm sure the preparation is a little bit more difficult. What is it like for you as a hitter out there? Would you say, and I know the ball flies and people like to talk about that, but that's just one part of it. Is it easier, harder, different? What is it like for you out there in the fall league as a hitter?
It's a little bit more challenging than what it is in the season because you're also not playing the same team. Like the team may be the Peoria Javelinas, but you're playing 5 different organizations in that one team. So each organization has a different philosophy, and each guy that they're running out there has a different pitch sequence that they like to abide by, or different stuff in general. So it's almost like every game is like an all-star game in a way. Yeah. Because you're seeing new arms, you're seeing different organizations, you're seeing high caliber talent. Everybody's just good. So the preparation that comes into this is it's almost like we know the scouting report, we know what he throws. We don't know like how often he throws some pitches in this place and 3-1 counts and all this other count. We don't know that. I just know for me, I personally just want to know what pitches he throws. And then I'll go up there and kind of just, at that point, just be a hitter. Like have my own approach, have my own plan of attack against who I'm facing, and then hopefully it works out in the end.
And it's been working out. You've been swinging it really well, especially pretty much from that time onward. Every time I saw you, I felt like you had a couple hits, had the home run, and things like that. I think one of the more underrated aspects of your game, and it's obvious that something's going to be underrated when, again, I mean, the big conversation around you is always going to be the stolen bases and the electrifying speed, but you hit the ball hard. And I caught you a game before. I think it was in Surprise. You ripped a couple balls foul that you were right on and hit them really hard. And then I was like, man, okay, like he can hit the ball pretty hard to that pull side. And then the very next day, or maybe 2 days later, you ambush a fastball, 107, line shot straight out to right. Has that power become part of your game, more recently? And is that something that came with kind of physical maturation, or is that something that came with a little bit of swing and approach changes? Because I'm looking at the collegiate breakdown. It was 6 home runs, I think, your final college season at West Virginia in 55 games. Technically speaking, that's more home runs per game, but I think 9 home runs and 10 triples and just the batted ball data in general would point towards you hitting the ball harder and hitting for more power this past year. What kind of helps you do that this year and start to tap into some juice?
Just kind of learning what kind of hitter I am. At West Virginia, I was a 3-hole hitter, so that kind of role and mentality changes a little bit because now you're trying to shoot for more like RBI opportunities, things like that. But in pro ball, being a leadoff guy, I know my goal is to get on base, steal bases, cause as much havoc as possible. And now you're looking at 2 3-hole hitters getting fastballs instead of getting breaking stuff.
Yeah.
I know like in terms of like the power, I just have like specific hot zones that like I know if you throw this ball here, like I can do damage here. I also know like if you throw it on the outer half, what I can do with it. Like I just know who I am more so as a player than like what I knew at West Virginia.
And how did that come? Just your bats experience and just being able to get those reps? Because to do what you did this year, I mean, this was arguably, you look at the season across the board, as good of a season you've played really at any level since you entered college, which is so impressive to see, right? And I think it was the fact that you got better as the year went on. And high A to double A is a big jump. It's a different beast in terms of the competition that you're going to face from a pitching perspective. Yes, Texas League in terms of environment, easier to hit it in terms of the ball carrying than the Midwest League, but again, way more talent. How are you able to just level up in double A? Because you played exactly 66 games in high A, 66 games in double A. Your OPS went up more than 60 points. Your batting average went up more than 40 points. And you were still that absolute menace on the base paths.
Yeah, I would just say it attributes to like learning, like the physical as well as the mental maturation of just a player. So like kind of as I've grown up and grew through like the levels, just kind of more so like understanding how I can affect the game, because there's more than one way that I could like necessarily like impact the game. It doesn't always have to be speed. It doesn't have to be power. Sometimes I can bunt to get a runner over. Like there's a lot of other ways that the game can be impacted more than just one. So I guess moving up, I know a little bit like in high A, pitchers a little bit more sporadic around the zone.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit harder to be aggressive with those guys, especially like when they're throwing balls like that are missing by a good amount. And then as I got to double A, pitchers have a better plan. They are attacking your weaknesses as well as pitching to their strengths. So they're relatively more around the zone. So a guy like me, I have a good eye, yes, but I like to be aggressive as well. So anything that's around the zone that I feel like I can handle, especially in an advantage count, I'm going to try to put a good swing on that, a level swing to try to give myself the best opportunity to hit line drive. That's kind of how that happened as I moved up. And then it just so happened I ended up performing better in double A than I was in high A.
So that thing that stood out to me in terms of like the underlying metrics, your contact within the zone in double A also improved by about 5-6% from that stint in high A. Does that tie in with what you just said in terms of just the confidence of being able to, just put good swings on balls in the zone? Like, I know that it helps approach wise, and you've always been a lower chase rate guy, but how is that conducive to maybe more contact within the zone when you're seeing better stuff in the zone?
Yeah, with me, I have a real kind of simple swing. There's not too many moving parts. Mm-hmm. It's just a load, make sure my hands are in a good position to be set to fire. And then that gives me a ton of time to recognize pitches, which allows me to have that better kind of end zone contact rate. So like at that point, it's just putting a good swing on it and and hopefully it's on the barrel, gives me a chance to get on base.
Talking about the moves, we're going to break it down a little bit because we have a really good open side slow-mo video that we're gonna go over on the kind of live breakdown version of this or portion of this. But your swing, you mentioned how simple it is and kind of just relying on really good bat to ball skills, a good feel for the barrel, and your explosiveness to kind of create that power. How do you balance that, I want to be simple. I want to see the ball early. I want to be contact oriented, while also you mentioned your hot zones and areas where you can do some damage. How do you balance that? Is that like a leverage count situation? Is that hunting specific spots to try to do some damage? Or is there just certain zones where hey, if it's middle end right there, I'm just naturally going to be able to turn on that and that's a home run? Like, is it an approach thing, or is it just certain areas where you're just able to do a little bit more damage naturally?
A lot of it is just like instincts and like knowing who I am as a player. So like, I just know like with specific pitches, like I've kind of already played out like, okay, like especially like in my routine, in my preparation, I hit off the tee. And like, while I'm hitting off the tee, I'm not just going through the motions. Like I'm actually thinking, okay, if he throws a fastball up, what am I trying to do with this pitch? If he throws a fastball in, how am I going to get to, like, what is the mindset of getting to this pitch? If he throws a changeup low and away, what is the mindset of getting to this pitch? So like, it's not necessarily in my preparation and my thinking, like I'm not just going through the motions. I'm like literally thinking, okay, how I'm going to, like, this is the pitcher I have for today. If he throws this here, this is how I'm going to attack him. So that's kind of like my mentality when it comes to that.
Being in the Cardinals organization, I mean, it comes with a lot of pride, and an organization that I think is one of the more storied in baseball and run as well as any. Also comes with a lot of really passionate and excited fans. And I can tell you for a fact that we see it all the time, how excited Cardinals fans, I'm sure you see it too, how excited they are about you just from what you've done. Is this anything you could have imagined? Because I know you feel like you still got work to do. You're still trying to push towards the big leagues, and that's the goal. But just zooming out and almost enjoying it for a little bit, right? Like, how cool has it been to go from a kid that was playing in West Virginia, just trying to get drafted, to a kid that's playing in the Fall Stars game and also has Cardinals fans just pounding the table, so excited about your potential debut in the next however many months or in the next year or so?
It honestly feels amazing, and it's kind of like surreal in a way. I never like really imagined the year that like I could have had, or even if it didn't go my way, that I wouldn't have had, but it turned out to be a pretty good year. But I never really could have imagined that this would kind of come about. It's definitely a blessing, and I'm super thankful to be in this position, to even be with the Cardinals organization for this historic organization, for these fans. I'm just blessed and thankful to even be in this position.
I saw some fans kind of grabbing you in surprise. Hey, Cardinals fans, they travel real well, even in the Arizona Fall League. They grabbed you and you signed autographs for a couple Cardinals fans. It's got to be so cool to just be in Arizona and see fans decked out in Cardinal stuff, knowing who you are, knowing everything about you, and asking for your autograph, right? I mean, that's got to be a pretty cool feeling.
Yeah, it's always like one thing about me is I always try to sign everyone's memorabilia, or if they have like a baseball they want me to sign, like I always kind of try to stop and sign, because I feel like people kind of gravitate towards like those type of people, like more so character than just like on the field.
100%.
So I always try to like stop and give some of my time.
And you can make a lot of people's days, especially kids. And that's the cool thing about the Fall League too, is just there's so many kids out there that get to see guys like yourself that are just the kind of access and the ability to just go up to you and get something signed is really special. The last thing I wanted to talk about in terms of just kind of your journey here, and it kind of was answered in some ways specifically, but 2022, you get drafted 5th round and you go to low A. And look, I grew up in South Florida. I used to play summer ball tournaments at some of those complexes in those fields. I know how much of a nightmare it is trying to hit in the Florida State League in terms of those stadiums. I've watched games where balls just go nowhere. And I know that's a tough place to kind of break in. And it was only 31 games after a long college season and all that stuff, but obviously was not nearly the statistical output that you had this year. Was that kind of some fuel for your fire in those 31 games in low A to come out and do what you did this year? Because it's just so impressive to see somebody go from 222, 750 OPS in low A to 303 with a near 800 OPS in high A and double A this past season. You talked about some of the things that you were able to do to improve overall, but what was that offseason like after making your pro debut, really, and then getting thrown into a much more challenging situation? I'm sure you were ready for that, but what was that preparation process like in the off season from that?
Right. So it started like kind of getting drafted and then getting into it. There was a lot of things that like I didn't necessarily like know about my swing. Like I was just going up there pretty much at the plate and being like an athlete is all that came down to. And then I started to realize like, okay, these are the type of positions I need to be in after meeting with like Russ Steinhorn and Daniel Nicolaisen, who was the hitting coordinator at the time. But I was talking to them and we started to kind of like devise like a plan of like what the swing should look like, how I fulfill the role of a leadoff guy, what that swing looks like, and kind of understanding the concepts around that. Coming into the off season, I know I took like a little break, began to train. I trained at the Champ Fit Grindhouse in Powder Springs, Georgia. Been training there since I was like 16 years old. But I went to a performance camp in October, and then I also went to a performance camp in December. And at both of those performance camps, it's like they gave me like homework pretty much. So like they would give me like the blast motion sensor, tell me like, look, these are the positions we want you to be in. This is how the swing should look. This is what will make you the most successful. I would go home and just rep that out as much as possible. So like it gave me like a direct focus in my workout. So like I knew how to then like even attack like my training. I knew what to ask for. Like, okay, this is what I want to work on. This I want to improve and get stronger in these positions. Mm-hmm. And then I went to the next performance camp. Okay, you gotten better at this. Now we want you to get better at on plane efficiency. So now you're in the zone for longer. So then I'm like, okay, let's work on that. So then I began to do my homework with that. And I don't know how many swings I was putting in a day. I would probably like 200 to 300, maybe 5, 6 days, 7 days a week. But I would then begin to like really hone in on that stuff because like I said before, kind of growing up, that work ethic principle, it like when I'm given a task, like I'm going to do it to like my full ability. So kind of going into the off season, working with Michael Butler and Coach Lawrence Peltier, who's like one of my old coaches growing up. It was like almost like a hand in hand kind of I'm looking for the word for it, but it just went hand in hand. And then with like the work ethic and then like the work that went with it. And then coming into like the season, that's when all of it just kind of came out in the wash. So just happened to be something pretty special.
So I noticed like in the early part of the season, you kind of, your setup was a little bit different, right? Your hands were kind of closer to in front of you. Your load had a little bit of almost a barrel tip backwards, and then you brought the hands back, but it was definitely a little bit busier than what you do now, which is pretty much just a very, as you mentioned, just kind of a very easy, simple kind of negative move, push back, and that's it. When did you kind of make that move? Because that was, I think, right early May, where you got the hands kind of set up a little bit further back and changed that setup for you. And is that something that you were tinkering with early, maybe going into the season, then said, I'm not going to make that change yet? Or, how'd you decide to make that change like within the first month of the season with your setup and, kind of simplifying the load even further? And I think kind of starting a little bit more in your legs. If I'm seeing it correctly, it's kind of tough with the video angles, but.
Yeah, no, you're seeing it correctly. It's, it was just like with that homework, it was like kind of interpreting it like as like for my own. So I would go into the season and I was like, okay, this is what I feel like. This is what I feel like my swing should feel like. And then it's like, well, I don't know. I'm not really like hitting the pitches I want to be hitting. Like I'm hitting consistently, but I'm not really driving the ball. So then kind of tinkering with my setup a little bit more. Then I began to like realize like, okay, this is where I want my hands. This is how I can consistently be on time, how I can consistently be hitting from the same position, because ultimately that's how you get stronger in your swing, is like hitting from the same position.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like where that came from. And then I began to start performing with that swing. So it stuck with me.
No doubt. And it clearly turned into some really good results there. Before we jump into the kind of live breakdown and getting a little bit more into those specific moves, I got to ask you about the stolen bases, of course. I mean, it's something that you've been answering questions about all year long, but 94 bags in 132 games, and then you're 16 of 18 in the fall league. So, I mean, that's just absurd. It's 110 stolen bases on 116 tries. Look, you've always been a burner. You've always been a guy that's been able to steal bags, but did you ever think that you could flirt with 100 bags in a full season like this? And, what's your goal for next year, dare I ask?
Yeah, I mean, I actually didn't know like what I was capable of, like in terms of like stealing bases. I knew I was like fast, but I knew as I moved up, I was gonna have to learn like that speed can kill you. So you may need to learn tendencies. You have to learn like pitcher habits, game situations. So like those three kind of branches all create this tree of knowledge pretty much. So kind of like learning, like sitting down, breaking down film on like, okay, what is this pitcher doing on first? Is he like a head move guy before he goes? Is he like twitching his hip, or is he doing something that's like a little bit like that he may think is normal, but like I am seeing as abnormal, that would give me a tell that he's pitching. So that kind of helped me propel myself a little bit further up until like those higher end numbers. And then also in the back of my head, my best friend Chandler Simpson, he's in the Rays organization. Like we talk so often. So like especially during the season, we always ask like how he's doing. And then like, of course, seeing like the weekly kind of updates on like who has the most stolen bases, he began to take the lead, and we do everything together. So like we bowl, play ping pong. So everything's like super competitive between us. So in the back of my head, I'm like, I need the extra edge in order to get him. And then he's thinking the same thing. Like I need the extra edge in order to beat him. So it's just between the two of us, man. That was kind of like in the back of my head with the stolen bases. So I never really even realized how close I was to 100 until kind of people started reminding me about it. I was just seeing it as I'm just trying to beat my best friend, man.
and did you tie or did you get him by one? Because I think there's like a discrepancy in the stats, but I did you get him by one?
So I had him by one. I had 95, and then 10 days after the game, they took one away. So I was on my way back. I was on my way back home, literally from Springfield, Missouri, and I got a call from my other friend who's in the Rockies organization, who I play with at West Virginia, Tevin Tucker. He was like, "Bro, did you know like that they took a stolen base away from you?" And I'm like, "What?" Like I was so blown, man. It was crazy, but I mean, it is what it is. Life moves on. So
did Chandler say anything then? He's like, "Oh, it turns out we tied." Stat correction. That's like a fantasy football nightmare. Like a stat correction at the end, you lose your week.
Yeah.
Did you hear from him on that one?
Yep. Of course I did. And then we started having the debate about like who was more impactful, who had more in like about stolen bases. Like he was like, I had more in less games. Like it went back and forth for at least like a week. And then we finally set it up on it and was like, look, we both had great seasons, man. Like you did your thing this year, I did my thing. Now I'm probably gonna go beat you in bowling. Like we just gotta set it like that.
Sounds like best friends to me, man. I love that, but that's awesome. And I think it gives a lot of minor league baseball fans something fun to watch next year, as you guys will be going at it again, I'm sure, on the stolen base department, because Chandler's absolutely a menace on the base paths as well. We're going to jump and do the quick little breakdown, a couple ABs that I have a couple catches and a couple stolen bases that I kind of want to walk through just your process there. So those listening to the show, the link to this separate video will be in the episode description. But Victor, for those who just are listening to the podcast side of things, thank you so much for taking the time to hop on, man. Congratulations on an unbelievable season. And it was so fun to watch you do your thing in the fall league. And I'm even more excited to watch you do your thing next year as you keep pushing towards the big leagues.
Yes, sir. Thank you.